Namaste. In this talk, I'll be holding forth on Dr. B.R. Ambedkar's views on Indian Muslims and their politics, as they were in the 1930s and 1940s. You might remember that Mr. Owaisi concluded his oath-taking in the parliament about 2 months ago with the chant, Jai Bhim, Jai Mim. Mr. Owaisi did that because Islamists, and he is an Islamist, there's no doubt about that, are trying to strike an alliance with the Dalit political leadership, or at least with the radical fringe of the Dalit political leadership. Is there a basis for this alliance? Is there a socio-economic basis for this alliance? There isn't one. Obviously, apparently, there isn't one. Because it is a fact that, though it is not acknowledged by the activist academia and media, that Muslims are a dominant caste in certain pockets of the Hindi belt. And they do oppress the Dalit Hindu castes in various ways. You do come across instances of this oppression, though they might not be reported that prominently in mainstream media. Moving on, is there an ideological basis for this alliance between Islamists and the Dalit political leadership? Is there a basis, for example, in the writings and opinions, views, ideas of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar? Actually, there isn't. What Dr. B.R. Ambedkar thought of Islam, or rather Indian Muslims and their politics, is to be found in a tract title, or rather a book titled Thoughts on Pakistan. It was published in the year 1940. Then again in the year 1945, it was republished as Pakistan or the Partition of India. This book, this part of the Ambedkarite corpus, the corpus of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, embarrasses the supposedly progressive academics. There are many academic biographers of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Take for instance, Gail Lomwitt and Eleanor Zaliat. They do refer to this work, but I'll say that they misrepresent it. When they refer to this work, they write about it as though Dr. B.R. Ambedkar was conceding that there is a basis for Pakistan, that there is a basis for the nationhood of Indian Muslims, and he was conceding Pakistan on account of that. Another scholar who has worked on Ambedkar, Christopher Jeffrello, does not refer to Pakistan or the Partition of India at all. Valerian Rodriguez, who is the editor of an omnibus edition of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar's writings, does include a portion of this work in this volume, in the volume that I referred to. However, this excerpt that is included in the volume edited by Professor Rodriguez is strategically chosen in a way as to convey to the reader that once again Dr. B.R. Ambedkar was conceding that there is an emotional political basis for the nationhood of Indian Muslims, and he was conceding Pakistan on account of that. This is once again an instance of misrepresentation of this work by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. What did he actually say in this book? What did he actually write about in this book? It is true that he was asking the Hindus of India, asking Hindus to concede Pakistan to the Muslims. But the arguments that he adduced, the arguments that he cited in favor of the suggestion are actually quite unflattering to the Indian Muslims. It is a lengthy work running into more than 400 pages, so it is not possible to summarize all of it, or even a part of it, or most of it in this brief talk. I'll touch upon certain salient points of this book, or certain salient ideas that are to be found in this book, the ideas on the basis of which Dr. B.R. Ambedkar was asking Hindus to concede Pakistan to the Muslims of India. To begin with, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar thought that an independent India with a large Muslim minority, trust me, before partition, Muslims constituted about 35% of the population of India, the population of undivided India. So Dr. B.R. Ambedkar believed, or rather thought, that an independent India with such a large Muslim minority will be actually an unfeasible India. India will be unstable on account of such a large Muslim minority. Why? He believed that the Muslim-dominated areas of northwestern India, the areas which today make the state of Pakistan, have no spiritual unity with the rest of India, presumably because of their religious difference with the rest of India. In fact, he wrote in his book, and I think I'm quoting his words verbatim here, I remember his words, he wrote that Burma has a greater spiritual unity with Hindustan than the northwestern parts of India with the rest of India. What had caused this rupture of spiritual unity between the northwestern areas of India and the remainder of India? Dr. B.R. Ambedkar very clearly wrote that this rupture, this severance of the spiritual unity between the northwest and the rest of India was brought about by the Muslim invasions, which had taken place repeatedly in century after century from 1000 AD onwards. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar wrote very clearly, very pointedly, without fudging words, without fudging his sentiments, that the people who led these invasions, Ahmad Shah Abdali, Mahmud of Ghazni, Nadir Shah, etc., wanted to annihilate Hinduism and went to great lengths to annihilate Hinduism and Hindus. They abducted Hindu women, they destroyed Hindu temples and forcibly converted thousands of Hindus. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar wrote in this book that these memories caused Hindus shame, but on the other hand, for the Muslims of India, these memories were a source of pride. So, there was a psychological rupture between the Hindus and Muslims of India. Secondly, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar wanted Hindus to concede Pakistan to the Muslim because of their extraterritorial loyalties. Remember, before Pakistan was created, before India was partitioned, India shared a border with Afghanistan. Dr. Ambedkar pointed to the composition of the British Indian Army as it was before 1947. Dr. Ambedkar pointed out in his book that the British Indian Army was composed mostly of Muslims recruited in the Punjab. That is, the Muslims had a majority share of the recruits to the British Indian Army. Now, Dr. Ambedkar feared that if Afghanistan were to invade India, probably this army will not defend India. Probably this army will simply retreat in the face of the invaders because it shared its religion with the invaders. So, Dr. Ambedkar believed that the Indian army, because the majority of soldiers were Muslims, were Punjabi Muslims, could not be trusted to defend India against a Muslim invader. Also, Dr. Ambedkar wrote very clearly in this book that probably a Muslim-dominated army will be difficult to control for an independent India. He believed that probably, he wrote that probably a Muslim-dominated army will not obey its Hindu officers because Muslims have a supremacist attitude towards Hindus. He wrote, anyone may refer to this book. It can be purchased very easily online or in the bookshops and verify what I am saying here in this talk. Dr. Ambedkar believed, Dr. Ambedkar wrote in this book that Muslim soldiers are unlikely to obey Hindu officers because they believe themselves to be superior to Hindus. That is, as I said some moments ago, they have a supremacist attitude towards Hindus. So, Pakistan had to be conceded in his eyes because Muslims are unlikely to defend India, Muslim soldiers are unlikely to defend India against a Muslim invader, and Muslim soldiers are unlikely to obey Hindu officers. Thirdly, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar advised Hindus to concede Pakistan to the Muslims on account of the communal situation prevailing in pre-independence India. From the 1920s onwards, the riots were frequent all across India, and they were growing in intensity. Now, Dr. Ambedkar did concede in the book that both Hindus and Muslims were suffering in the riots, and that is, both Hindus and Muslims were dying in the riots, but at the same time, he pointed out that Hindus were suffering more than the Muslims. The situation was so bad in his eyes that he termed it a veritable civil war in his book. Also, he believed that nationhood is impossible without a genuine social unity, and he wrote in his book that there is no true genuine social unity, social alliance between the Hindus and Muslims because of the major difference in their religious outlooks. He wrote very pointedly, very clearly in this book that the religious outlooks of the Hindus and Muslims are so different that they are veritably different species. So apparently they could not together constitute one nation. Further, he cautioned Hindus that making political concessions to the Muslims is not going to have a positive outcome. He told Hindus, he wrote in this book, that Muslims were demanding political concessions not because they were oppressed, not because they were marginal, but because they were into power politics. Muslims demanding concessions from Hindus was a manifestation of power politics in his eyes, and he wrote that if Hindus keep acceding to these demands, they will actually hand over the country to the Muslims. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar also found Muslim society stagnant. He very fairly observed that there were social evils prevalent in both Hindu and Muslim society. However, he wrote that Hindus are different from Muslims because at least some Hindus were working to eradicate, to abolish those evils, but no Muslims were trying to eradicate, abolish the evils which prevailed in their own society. This was because, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar wrote, Muslim politicians did not recognize the secular categories of life. They also prioritized the unity, communal unity of their own society against Hindus. They did not want to rupture the unity of the society by triggering debates and promoting social reform, because then they believed that it will weaken them against Hindus. Finally, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar noticed the Muslim tendency of committing political aggression upon the Hindus. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar wrote that Muslims insisted on a practice just to annoy Hindus, just to needle Hindus. And they did not give up this practice unless Hindus made some major political concessions to them. The example that he cited was the Muslim insistence on cow slaughter, though cow slaughter was not required or is not required in the Muslim religion. But Dr. B.R. Ambedkar wrote that Muslims insisted on cow slaughter only to get political concessions out of Hindus. So this is a brief summary, rather a very brief summary of a very lengthy book, and a book that must be read by every Indian. I hope through this brief summary, I have been able to give you a fair idea of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar's thought of Indian Muslims and their politics. And let me assure you that at least on the basis of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar's writings and opinions, there is no foundation for a Dalit Muslim alliance. It is a chimera that Islamists like Mr. Owaisi are leading the Dalit leadership towards. Thank you.